I've been playing D&D for just over a decade now. I started with 3.5, played a little bit of 4th edition, and made the switch to 5th edition. I'm very excited to see what they do with 1D&D, but I also wanted to look back at some of the past editions and really examine what I loved about them. So this week, I decided to look at the Cleave and Greater Cleave feats from 3.5. I remember these feats being a lot of fun for my players and myself to use. The fighter would be surrounded by his enemies and he would just cleave through them all with some very good rolls and some amazing damage. Now there are some feats in 5th edition that have the same feel as this, but not quite the same. So I wanted to see if I could bring it over to 5th edition and to my players. Start off, what is Cleave? Cleave was the 3.5 feat that built off another feat. It had the prerequisite of power attack, which allowed you to trade the attack bonus for damage, which is something we see in a fighter ability as well. Once you had the power attack feat, then you could take the Cleave feat, which allowed an extra melee attack after dropping a target, but just one. Then once you had that, you had power attack, cleave, and a base attack bonus of +4, you could take Great Cleave, which had no limit to cleave attacks each round. This is kind of similar to a 5th edition feat called Great Weapon Master. You've learned to put the weight of a weapon to your advantage, letting its momentum empower your strikes. You gain the following benefits. On your turn, when you score a critical hit with a melee attack or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with one, you can make one melee weapon attack as a bonus action. Before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon that you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, you can add a +10 to the attack's damage. Now, this is essentially trying to emulate the Cleave feat from 3.5, and while it does a really good job, I think it's very balanced and it's very fair, I still miss the Cleave feature. Now I've thought about, do I just try and take the Cleave feature and bring it completely into 5th edition, or do I work off of the Great Weapon Master? I think the Great Weapon Master has a lot of interesting things to do. I like that it is when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, which isn't part of the Cleave from 3.5. Now the problem, in my opinion, is the fact that with Great Weapon Master, you have to use your bonus action, which makes sense from a balancing perspective. This will make it so you don't just do hit after hit after hit after hit, which at level 1, if you take Great Weapon Master, you shouldn't be able to eliminate, endless enemies just because you get critical hits or you reduce them to 0. I understand why they put it as a bonus action. That's why I'm going to build upon the Great Weapon Master feat to make it A, a prerequisite, and B, I'm going to use how in 3.5 you need to have a base attack bonus. I'm going to make it so you need a certain proficiency bonus in order to get what I'm going to call the Great Cleave ability. I normally do most of my creation on D&D Beyond. I really do find that it's quite easy on there. Unfortunately, with the new 1D&D rules with feats and prerequisites, the site hasn't quite built that yet. So I'm going to be using World Anvil. I like to term it my wiki of my world. It's where I also have all my homebrew spells, magic items, monsters, and kind of the world that I've been developing for the current 5e game that I've been running for about 2 to 3 years. So I'm going to design it on here because, as you can see, there's already a thing that says prerequisite. Now, actually building what the feat's going to do is obviously the tricky part. How do I keep it balanced? What do I include? What do I not include? So, I'm going to look at the Great Weapon Master, and the big thing about it is when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with 1, you can make 1 melee weapon attack as a bonus. This feat I'm going to design is going to let you do that as many times as possible. So I'm going to eliminate the critical hit. Even though that doesn't happen very often, obviously, the odds of that happening over and over again are not that rare. I'm only going to make it reduce a creature to 0 hit points. When you use your bonus action after reducing a creature to 0 hit points, to attack another creature with a melee weapon attack, you can do this an unlimited amount of times when you reduce another creature to 0 hit points. One of the beautiful things about homebrewing stuff and also just creating your own stuff is, well, the wording might not be perfect. When you're using in your games, when you're playtesting it, you can change it a little bit. You can, talk to your players. So while this might not be going out there for the masses, although please feel free to use this and let me know your thoughts on it. You can change and tweak the writing to be a little bit better. And there we have it, the Great Cleave feat for 5th edition. Upon reflecting upon it, the Cleave feat was already pretty much done with the Great Weapon Master. There really was no different way of doing it. But I do feel the Great Cleave feat does have a part to play in 5th edition. My final thoughts on it is it's up for a playtest. Obviously, I'll have to see how balanced or unbalanced it really is. I think the proficiency bonus prerequisite is the very big thing. In 3.5, they had a strength prerequisite, but I'm not a huge fan of that, actually, because I want this to be accessible for dex-based characters as well. So thank you so much. Please leave a comment, let me know what you think of it, and also like and subscribe.